We live in a culture obsessed with uniqueness. From childhood, we are told to stand out, to be special, to carve our own identity in the stone of history. And yet, here lies the paradox. The more we try to be special, the heavier life feels. What was meant to free us, the celebration of individuality, often becomes a prison. The burden of being somebody can feel far more suffocating than the freedom of being nobody. Imagine a single flower in a meadow. It doesn't strain to be special. It doesn't compare its petals with the one beside it, or count how many bees stop to drink its nectar. It simply blooms, radiant in its own time, and fades when the season calls. But when a human being is born, almost immediately we are given names, labels, expectations. You must succeed, you must be different, you must prove yourself. And so, unlike the flower, we begin to push and pull against the world, desperate to hold on to an identity that will set us apart. Here is the paradox. The more tightly we clutch at the idea of being unique, the less alive we actually feel. In trying to prove ourselves special, we often lose the very spontaneity, playfulness, and joy that would make us naturally shine. Have you noticed how the people most desperate to stand out seem anxious, restless, constantly measuring themselves against others? While those who simply live, who sing, laugh, and dance, without self-consciousness, glow in a way no effort could produce. It is as though life whispers to us a riddle. You will only be special when you stop trying to be. So, what happens when the burden of identity grows too heavy? When being somebody becomes a mask we can no longer remove? Do we keep adding layers of paint, hoping the mask will one day feel real? Or is there another way, a way closer to the meadow flower, the flowing river, the silent stars, where identity is not manufactured, but discovered in the act of simply being? This is the question at the heart of our journey. What happens when we stop trying to be special and instead allow ourselves to just be? There was once a boy named Daniel, the kind of child every parent quietly hopes for. Bright in school, good with words, polite with elders. From the moment he could write his own name, people told him he was different. Teachers said, "You're gifted." Relatives whispered, "This one will go far." Even friends expected him to be the leader of every group project, the one who had all the answers. At first, Daniel enjoyed the praise. Who wouldn't? It felt good to be noticed, to be seen as special. But as the years passed, the praise hardened into pressure. Every success only raised the bar higher. If he got an A, he had to get the next A. If he wrote a poem that made the class applaud, the next one had to be even better. Soon, Daniel found himself living not for the joy of learning or creating, but for the approval that came with it. He began to fear mistakes, because mistakes weren't allowed for someone special. He couldn't relax, couldn't laugh too loudly, couldn't try something new unless he was sure he'd excel. Even friendships felt heavy, because deep down he wondered, would they still love me if I weren't extraordinary? By the time Daniel reached college, he was exhausted. One evening, while walking home, he noticed a group of kids playing basketball on a cracked street court. They were shouting, missing shots, teasing each other, sweating, falling, laughing, and none of it mattered. Nobody was trying to be special. They were just being. Daniel stood there for a long time, watching. something inside him ached with both envy and recognition. He realized how long it had been since he played simply for the joy of playing, since he laughed without worrying if his laughter was too much, since he created without the pressure of perfection. In that moment, he saw clearly. What had begun as a gift, being called unique, had become a weight he carried everywhere. The very thing meant to lift him up was pinning him down. Daniel's story is not unusual. Many of us carry the same invisible weight, the expectation to be someone, to prove our worth, to leave a mark that no one else can. It sounds noble, but beneath it is a quiet terror. What if I'm ordinary? What if I don't stand out? What if I'm not enough? Alan Watts once pointed out that the sun does not try to shine, nor does the tree strain to grow. A river doesn't push itself forward. It simply flows, and in that flowing, it finds the sea. Nature doesn't suffer the anxiety of identity. The oak does not compare itself with the pine. The waves don't argue over which one is more important. They simply express their being, and that is enough. But human beings, with our restless minds, have built a culture that tells us otherwise. We chase uniqueness as though it were oxygen, when in fact, the more we grasp at it, the more we choke. Ironically, the moment we stop trying to be special is the moment we discover a deeper truth. We already are. Not because we've earned it, not because others approve, but because existing itself is extraordinary. Think of music. A single note held too long becomes dull. But when notes flow into one another, they create melody. Life works the same way. Our uniqueness is not in the isolated note of our identity, but in how we blend, harmonize, and move with the whole symphony. When Daniel saw those kids on the basketball court, laughing and stumbling, he recognized something ancient. Joy doesn't come from being above others. It comes from being with them, from dissolving the mask of "I must be different" and rejoining the dance of ordinary life. And so, the principle emerges. Identity is not a crown we must wear at all times, but a costume we can slip in and out of. Sometimes you are the leader, sometimes the follower. Sometimes you shine, sometimes you fade. And in both, life is whole. As Watts said, paraphrased, trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth. The harder you grip identity, the more it slips away. The freer you become, the more naturally your uniqueness appears. Life offers us two very different roads when it comes to identity. Path one is the one most of us are trained to follow. It begins with the command, stand out, be somebody. On this road, every interaction becomes a subtle performance. You edit your words to sound impressive. You polish your image like armor. You fear mistakes because mistakes might reveal you are not as special as they think. Over time, this path becomes narrow and suffocating. Loneliness creeps in, because if people only love the mask you wear, who will love the person underneath? Anxiety grows because identity is fragile. One slip, one failure, and it feels like everything could collapse. This is the burden of being special, a crown so heavy that it bends the neck. Path two is less glamorous, but infinitely lighter. It begins not with the command, but with a surrender. Be as you are. On this road, identity is not a cage, but a costume, something you can wear, change, or drop. Instead of trying to prove yourself different, You relax into the flow of being human. You laugh when you stumble. You try without needing to conquer. And strangely, this very ordinariness shines brighter than all the effort of Path 1. Here, uniqueness is not forced. It ripens naturally, the way a fruit matures on its branch. We can see the difference in nature itself. A desert, stripped of diversity, is barren and harsh. Every plant fights for survival in isolation. Contrast that with a forest, countless trees, mosses, insects, and birds, all existing together in a vast, interwoven symphony. No single tree has to scream, "Look at me, I'm unique." Yet the forest is alive precisely because each is simply itself. Or think of music. A soloist who refuses to listen to the orchestra may play loudly, but the result is chaos. Only when the musician joins the ensemble does beauty unfold. In the same way, when we loosen our grip on the idea of being special, we begin to harmonize with life itself. So the choice is before us. We can live burdened by the mask of uniqueness, or freed by the play of being. And here's the one-liner to carry with you. When you stop trying to be special, you discover you already are. What if the greatest freedom is not in knowing who you are, but in admitting you don't know? We spend so much of life trying to pin down an identity. I am this. I am not that. This is me. That is not me. Yet every time we think we've captured ourselves, the picture shifts. The child becomes the adult becomes the parent becomes the elder. Which one is the real you? The truth is slippery, like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it runs away. Alan Watts loved to point out these paradoxes. A knife cannot cut itself. A fire cannot burn itself. The eye cannot see itself. In the same way, the self cannot fully grasp the self. And far from being a flaw, this is the very source of wonder. For if you could completely define yourself, life would be over, a fixed label in a dead museum. It is the mystery of not knowing, the openness to surprise, that keeps existence alive. Think about the night sky. Each star burns silently, unaware of its own brilliance. Yet we, looking up, see constellations, stories, infinite possibility. Or imagine laughter. You never truly hear your own laugh the way others do. It escapes you, spontaneous, alive. And precisely because you cannot control it, it delights. So perhaps the weight of being special dissolves the moment we step into the unknown. Instead of clinging to certainty, I must be this, I must prove that, we allow ourselves to be carried by the river of, I don't know. In that surrender, life becomes lighter, fresher, more mysterious. For what is more special than a mystery that can never be solved? The invitation, then, is not to secure identity, but to loosen it, not to trap life in a label, but to let it flow uncontained. To live as the eye lives, seeing everything, yet never needing to see itself. And maybe, just maybe, that is where freedom truly begins. We began with a paradox, that being special, which was supposed to liberate us, often becomes our heaviest burden. And now, after walking through story, principle, contrast, and mystery, perhaps we can see the truth more clearly. The problem was never uniqueness itself. It was our desperate attempt to cling to it, to prove it, to perform it. Life doesn't need your performance. It needs your presence. Think of the autumn leaf. When it loosens its grip and falls, it does not lose itself. It fulfills itself. The falling is part of its being. In the same way, when we stop clutching at identity, when we let go of the endless need to stand out, something softer and far more radiant appears. We return to a natural rhythm, sometimes in the spotlight, sometimes in the quiet shadows, but always belonging. Alan Watts once reminded us that you are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. That freedom, to change, to shift, to let go, is the antidote to the burden of being special. You do not need to be somebody fixed. You only need to be alive to this moment. And here is the gift hidden in the paradox. When you stop trying to be extraordinary, you realize that ordinary life itself is extraordinary. The laughter of a friend, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the quiet breath you didn't even notice you were taking, these are not small things. They are miracles wearing simple clothes. So let us return to the central question. What happens when we stop trying to be special and simply allow ourselves to be? The answer is not a concept, but a feeling, a lightness, a relief, a freedom. We are no longer carrying the mask of identity, but walking bare-faced into the mystery of life. And there, without effort, without pressure, without burden, we find that we shine most naturally. So perhaps the true invitation is this: do not strive to be special. Let life itself reveal your uniqueness, for what is truly yours does not need to be forced.